all going on. You know, it wasn't just
You're
that.
turning the knife in me.
Okay, so
We ready to start?
we're ready to start.
So what do you feel like? You feel like opening with some of the stories and getting it out of the way?
Sure, I'll start with my dad, I guess. And how to start with my dad.
Good from here.
Kurt, I don't want you to get the paper.
Huh?
I don't want you to get paper.
Yeah, what'll happen is that what he'll do is that he'll crop that.
Okay.
He can crop that right on out. That won't be a problem. So what he's going to do, he's going to get from, probably from where the brooch or the necklace up, okay?
Okay.
So what we want you to do is you're going to keep your papers down here.
Okay.
But when you're ready to give your answer, you go ahead, you read, listen, you can read, get yourself set on up, and then you're going to look right over to Linda Ann, all right? And then you're going to speak, you know, don't try to memorize all the lines. Just remember the feeling of what the line is saying. You're going to get all that information. You're going to get all that information across. It's going to come across fine. All right, I'm telling you, it's going to come
You're a
across.
good pep talker.
It's going to come across fine because this is information that you know. All you're doing is that you're just checking, and if you feel uncomfortable, we'll take another check. I have time.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no rush, just you should enjoy it. And, okay, so we're going to go ahead, I'm going to give us a little sound check. We're going to go ahead and take the first one.
And we're going to do a little story about my father, Patrick George Smith. I'm Susan Costa, formerly Susan Smith, and I am the great niece of Texas Guinan. My father is her nephew, only nephew, and he was born George Patrick, and somewhere along the line, he changed to Patrick George, unofficially, but all of his military records and everything show it to be Patrick George. And I am one of 5 children, and the stories that my dad would tell me, or us kids about Texas, were very sparse and few in between. He was born in 1917 and was only 15 years old when she died. So there's not a lot of memory, I think, on his part. And it was just not a spoken story in our house.
Kurt, let me ask you, are we getting glare on Susan's glasses at all? Are we getting
I
glare?
was wondering about that.
A little bit, but not, let's see, let me just go across like here. I can go like
I can't read
this.
taking them off.
No, what I'll do is that, it's okay because it's almost understood there's going to be some lighting that's going to happen inside.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just took it a little offset for her.
I can't read with them off.
okay.
Can't see a thing.
Yeah, I think it's okay with the lighting, though. I don't think it's going to cause.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah, no, but it's a good
I-
catch, it's a good catch.
I'm seeing,
And you just see the glare of the lights.
But see, the way that the camera is offset, the light is over on the side over here of the glasses.
Okay.
But that's okay, though, but it's still there. But again, I think it's something that's understood.
yeah, thanks
All right,
for
yeah,
checking. Thanks for checking.
So now where am I
So,
going with,
why don't you say something about your grandmother and grandfather, and then you know where he got the George from?
okay,
Because it's really named for his father. It's really named George Patrick, his
right,
father.
right.
What about something about your grandmother, which is not,
Okay.
you know,
So my father is the only child of Pearl Guinan, who is the younger sister of Texas, and Pearl married George C. Smith, and they had 2 children. One died in childbirth, and then my dad is the only child. And Daddy was born in 1917, and I'm lost here, so I know he'll cut this out, right?
make it clear that they were never living in New York. That he
See,
only
I am
came-
just not clear. Oh, that they never lived in New York.
Yeah, that he only came, the only few times he was with his aunt were on vacation trips and so forth, that they were out in the West. So they were completely divorced from her life here in New York. They weren't like Tommy, who stayed in New York with her.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, that Pearl had her own life out on the West Coast and didn't really, approve, of what was going on. She wasn't, she wasn't one of these understanding people.
Oh, you want to say that? I'm
Yeah.
guessing. I don't know that that's true.
Oh.
I'm guessing. She never spoke, my grandmother Pearl never spoke of Texas, which is her sister, or the life that she led. And grandmother and Grandpa George were married in Trinidad, Colorado, and then they moved to Southern California because Grandpa George was working in the mines. So he moved around for that. And then Daddy was born in Anaconda, Montana, with one of their movings. And then they settled in Southern California, and that's where he was raised, and went to school, graduated from USC, and then joined the Coast Guard and served through World War II in the Coast Guard. I think
As a child, my father didn't come to New York very often. He
Okay.
didn't spend time. This is something like that to let them know why there's this disconnect in the family.
Okay. As a child, he grew up not really knowing a lot about the Guinans, and when they all moved and followed Texas to New York, he was not a part of that other than an occasional vacation that I've been told that they would take, and he would go back east. But she was not a big part of his life. And then she died in 1933, Daddy was 15, and it was just kind of the end of the story at that point. His mother, Texas sister Pearl, continued living with George in Southern California until they came to visit us up in Central California, our family, and then Grandpa George passed away in 1949, and Grandma Pearl went back down to Southern California for a while and eventually moved back up to Central California and lived with us until she died in the 1960s. Yeah. And she never shared stories about Texas at all. Her house was full of pictures of the family, but we knew nothing about her mom and dad, Michael and Bridget, other than what I've done as far as some research, reading off the internet and then doing my own genealogical research. In that research, I have found zero on Michael Guinan, other than he was born in Richmond, Quebec, and crossed over into Chicago when he was around 20. I can't find anything about his actual father's name. When Michael died, Bridget was providing the information on the death certificate, and she was going into periods of senility. And when it asked for his mother's name and father's name, she provided hers. So when I was starting this research, I had Mary McCabe as the mother of both Michael and Bridget. And the name for Michael's father was either John or Joseph. And so it's been a hard road to try to discover who the Guinans are. I've since learned that perhaps that Michael's father came over with a brother and they settled in Ontario, not Quebec. So I don't know how they ended up in Quebec. Bridget, who was baptized in Sherbrooke, Canada, Quebec, was baptized as Cecilia Bridget Duffy, and she is one of 7 children. And the only stories or tracking that I've been able to do so far is to know about Mary, her sister. And so for a long time I thought there was just Mary and Bridget, and there's not. I've just learned about the other 5 children, so I'll start doing a little bit of research on them.
was from Ireland?
Oh, the research has shown that both the Duffys and the Guinans came from Ireland, and I do know now for a fact that the Duffys came from County Meath, Ireland. I do not know where the Guinans are from. Heard very many counties, but you have to have the actual baptismal or the church parish in order to do any tracking. So it's not impossible. It'll be a continued journey that I'm doing. The time that the boys, the older Guinans and Duffys came over. But my search, I want to find out if there's more Michael's brothers. If there are, I've read that there were 2 boys, and that'll be a continued search to find out about them.
These mysterious people.
The mysterious Guinans, very secretive, all the way to my grandmother Pearl Guinan's death. They were secretive.
Yeah. Now tell us about this archive of wonderful pictures. Who preserved it? When did you become aware of all these postcards, this wonderful stuff? Somebody preserved it.
Everything was passed down as far as pictures and stories through my father, being the only child. And even though he did not give us a lot of information, when we would get older in our late teens, still at the house, we would open up big boxes of photographs, and he would pull them out, and then he would try to remember. It was a guessing game for him too. So in those pictures, we had the postcards that Texas would send to him, and her nickname for him was Patty. So the postcards are addressed to Patty Smith, and most of them are addressed to when they are in Southern California. And then we would go through and label as much as my dad could remember. Obviously, the ones with Texas was a no-brainer. We knew those were her. But there's a few that we don't have the names that she's with. And the timeline as to when they are, it's just something I have to find out online and listen to stories. He did not have the timeline because I'm sure Grandma Pearl just packed everything away. And then the boxes and the trunks were opened when she died, and then that's when we started going through them and hearing the stories about Tommy Guinan, Texas' brother, and William Guinan, and we always knew him as Willie. He was Uncle Willie. And then he, from the stories I've heard, Willie never participated in any of the fancy life that Texas lived, and he married and lived in upstate New York, and that's where he died. And we never knew him. My dad did know him because if I remember a tidbit of a story that when Texas died and Tommy took her for burial, my dad might have been a part of that, but that's kind of shaky, I'm thinking of. I can't remember if he came to New York with her. But that's when she died, or not when she died, when Tommy died, excuse me, then we started hearing more of the stories. Because Daddy would get information and we say, well, who is that part of the family? Oh, well, that's Grandma Pearl's brother, or what have you.
Mention that Bridget and her husband had 4 children and the order of birth, so that people understand where Pearl falls in the order. You know that it was William first, Texas, then Tommy, then Pearl. Just mention the order of birth, and then say something, and they all 4 took different paths in life. So this way, the people who are listening understand who was born first and so forth.
So according to the family Bible that Michael kept, it showed that Michael and Bridget were married in Georgetown, Colorado, and then they started having the children. No, actually they moved to Waco, and all of the children are born in Waco, Texas. And Texas being the first, that's William P. Guinan was born first, and then it was Cecilia, Mary Louise Cecilia. She goes by so many names. And then it was Tommy, and then it was Pearl. So Pearl was the baby of the 4 children. And they all grew up and chose different paths for their lives, some getting married, some having kids, and some not. And then Tommy followed Texas and stayed with her and worked with her. And as Texas moved to New York, she had Michael and Bridget come up from Waco. I believe Michael was running a wholesale grocery market in Waco for about 5 years. A visit that I did to Waco not too long ago to see what I could find, we actually found the foundation of the house that they lived in. I don't know about the ranch. I know there are stories that they lived on a ranch in Waco, but where they lived while he had the wholesale market is in downtown Waco. And we went by and took pictures of the stoop and the steps going up to it. And the house right next door to it is still standing, so I have a good visual of what kind of house they lived in. And then they...
What kind of house was it?
The type of architecture is, I wouldn't say modern Victorian, 2 to 3 stories, a lot of steps up with a porch, and beautiful trees, very similar to a lot of the brownstones I'm seeing here in New York. And the same house that Grandma Pearl and Grandpa George lived in Southern California was very similar, although it was a bungalow type house. It still had the very large concrete front and the steps. So that architecture, I guess, of the time.
Interesting.
Oh, what else can I tell you?
It's really interesting that archive was so preserved. I mean, even though people didn't speak about her, they obviously felt, don't throw this stuff out, you know. They kept it intact.
Grandmother Pearl was probably bordered on being a hoarder. She kept both with her Catholicism in her religion and with, she had lots and lots of religious statues and books and things that were very important to her in her life, which is the complete opposite of the life that Texas had led, which is one of the reasons that I personally feel why we never heard much about it. Grandma was not proud of the style of life that Texas lived with her strict Catholic upbringing. But she did keep everything about her. So down deep, maybe she loved her and she was proud of her down deep, but it was something that she didn't share outwardly. So I think that is how she kept all the pictures that we have and kept them in good condition, never speaking of her, but saving them for when she died. They passed on down to my father. And then we've got them. And none of us have been interested in archiving or searching anything or knowing. And then something clicked in me and I started asking questions saying, who are these people? Why don't we know anything about them? And that search has led me here.
I try to say something like this, not exactly, but oddly enough, or curiously enough, the Catholic faith that my grandmother Pearl had was something she did share with Texas, because Texas, for all her wild side, was a devout Catholic, and we went to the church at St. Joseph's, and that was the parents went there. She went there. She baptized the showgirls. I mean, they still had that Catholic strain in them. You know what I'm saying? The sisters both shared that because she felt it was very important. All these illegitimate showgirl babies, she baptized them. She took them to church. She brought them to the font. This was all Texas. It was in the paper, so I know it's true.
Oh, those are stories I have not read yet.
They're on the blog, and
But
I even have the newspaper clip so you could read the whole thing. What years it was?
When she died, when Texas died, I was under the impression that they were going to be bringing her back to St. Malachi's Church. But the service was not held there, and from the stories I've read. And I would only suppose and guess that it was that the Catholic Church didn't want to have that reputation brought back into it. And I'm just guessing, as opposed to St. Joseph's Church, where they were a part of. I was also thinking that St. Malachi's was very important to Michael and Bridget, and that I hadn't heard any stories about Texas participating in a lot of that it restricted her, and that when one of the story that I've read is that when Texas was bad growing up as a teenager, that she was sent away when Bridget had had enough of her, and she was sent to her aunt, which would be Mary, her sister Mary, to take care of and get her out in the country, which might have prompted her horseback riding, learning, and such. I don't know how much of it came from her dad, Michael, but I know that one of the stories is that when she was a bad girl, she was sent for her timeouts back then, and her timeouts were on the ranch. So there's a little bit more research for me to do to find out when she was there and why she was there. But that's probably a sure thing, is that's why she developed the horseback riding affinity that she had.
Very interesting, very interesting.
And I don't know anything about Bridget's sister Mary, other than she married and went up to Vermont and has a family life there, that there are more children from that marriage that I have to research.
Did go to at St. Malachy's, for example, Rudolph Valentino.
Yes.
She and May both attended his funeral and had many seances to try to bring him back and so forth. But, because she died so suddenly, and it was January, it might have just been very difficult for Tommy to get her into such a popular church. You
That
know
might
what I'm
have been
saying?
it. And
Yeah.
the news story was that her body would be brought back and they would have the service there. And then the next story was that the service was held at Campbell's funeral home.
Frank Campbell's funeral home.
Right. And
With
then
10,000 people
Yes.
swarming the streets. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the large motorcade of her. And then the reburial is another news story that I have heard. I knew she was in the mausoleum up in Calvary. I did not know that she was buried somewhere else, and then they moved her. So that's research I have to do. And the mausoleum is there with Michael and Bridget and William and Tommy.
Calvary.
And there is,
Calvary.
yes,
Calvary? Oh.
yes. And there's one space left for my grandmother Pearl, who chose to be buried in Los Angeles with her husband George. And there is nothing that can be done with that one space. And I know space is prime in New York for burial, but that's one space that will be unfilled
Interesting.
for the Guinan. So the Guinan mausoleum has just the 4 Guinans in it.
Say where it is again. Say where it is again. The Guinan's
Oh,
mausoleum.
the Guinan mausoleum is in the town of Brookside, but it's Calvary. Calvary. Yeah, cemetery outside of New York. And that's someplace I need to go yet.
Yeah. Do you want to do the fill-in lines, or do you
A
have
break.
a few more things? You want a break?
A break.
Oh, sure. Let's have a break.
Fill us some water maybe, and
Yeah, let's have Susan's glass.
Yeah, let me get a
Here's your
Okay.
glass. Which one do you want? You
Just
want
plain
or you
water.
want-
Oh, and by the way, you're doing absolutely
Okay.
miraculous.
I would expect you to say nothing else.
Thank you. Say when.
Really, just spectacular.
That's
Okay.
fabulous.
Yes.
Fabulous.
And I love the questioning. I love you're such a nice style.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. You want some?
Oh, please, just
I have mine, so give that to Kurt.
Yes, I'm asking you to pause.
Oh, pause water, yeah. Do you want this, Kurt, instead? You want something with flavor? This is coconut, I think, pineapple coconut.
Okay, I'll take a little of this.
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot.
I'm trying to do the inside.
That's it.
Just pretend there's some Malibu rum in there.
I won't be pretending a little bit later on.
No, me neither.
Excellent, thank you very
Yeah,
much. Thank you.
better than just having plain old water.
So Linda, you can speak a little louder because they're just going to cut you out. You're just
Well, I'm not trying to, I'm going to,
You won't be speaking, and Sue's speaking, so you don't have to worry.
The good thing about the chair and everything is that just keep yourself a little bit straighter, because this way, when you turn like that, I'm getting 3/4 of your face like that.
Okay,
All right?
but still look at her.
You're still looking at her,
Okay.
but what'll happen is that you're naturally going to change. Your inflections
I do.
happen, and that's fine. That's excellent, because that's exactly what, an audience wants to see.
A real person.
They're seeing a real person. And don't, perfection is nowhere to be found. So if you stumble on a word, it's okay, because that's how we speak naturally and normally. So when you're capturing something like this is quite all right. But you speak eloquently and succinctly, so it's just really,
Thank you.
really just well done.
now, let me just ask you. Mary Louise Cecilia has a sister, Pearl. Pearl must have had several other names, right?
Yes,
Because she could not have been.
she was baptized Margaret. She's Margaret Pearl.
Margaret Pearl.
Yeah,
And Margaret means pearl. My mother's name is Margaret.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Okay. See, I'm Linda Ann because I'm before Vatican I, right? And you could not be brought to the baptismal font as Jennifer when I was born. You had to have a saint's name. So
Really?
Linda is not a saint. So it became Linda Ann because there's Saint Anne, the mother
Oh,
of
I
Mary.
did not know that.
Oh, okay. And it's all changed now. Now you could be foo-foo and, and be christened. But, in my time, so definitely in their time, she couldn't, there's no St. Pearl.
No,
So she would have had to have
Margaret.
so she's actually Margaret
So
Pearl.
say Margaret, is it?
and Willie is William Parnell.
Oh, for Parnell.
Whatever where that came from, I have no idea.
Well, he was the great, Irish freedom fighter.
Parnell?
Oh my God, there's so many odes and everything to Parnell.
Oh my goodness, see, I learned something new every time I talk to you. And there's the Irish coming out again.
Oh, they're so proud of Parnell. I mean, Parnell, if you go to Ireland, there's, probably bridges and towns and odes and all sorts of stuff. Big freedom fighter.
And Thomas is, middle initial is G. Thomas G. Guinan.
Could have been a George in there somewhere.
Could have been.
A Gregory, probably not. Could have been Gregory,
Never-
St. Gregory.
And I don't know if I have his birth certificate. I know I don't have his, no, I do have his death certificate, but I don't have his birth certificate. And I know the death says Tommy, and he was born Thomas. I mean, the family Bible says that. But I'm pretty
interesting.
sure it just says Thomas G. Guinan.
Interesting.
Don't
Yeah,
overlap. Don't overlap.
How many years were they apart? Mary Louise and Pearl.
89 to 84. So
Oh, 5 years.
5 years. And the two boys were in between. It's an interesting fill-in on it.
I'm writing a line for you.
See, this is just all foreign to me.
Will those, again, are something either I said or Louise said, and he told me I'm too much in the film. I have to be taken out, so that's your job. Or Louise could have said some of those things, you know. But you know, it sounds more authentic coming from you, frankly. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but I don't know any of this other than reading it from here or reading it from the internet or reading it from your blog or the stories.
Oh, okay.
So she was
And-
conned by Walter Cunningham, the weight
was that,
loss scam.
you know, the
That's a
famous weight
story I've
loss.
heard. I know nothing about it.
Oh, okay.
So for me to say it, it's kind. I don't.
Anything you don't feel comfortable saying, don't say, because
Okay.
it can just be. It's already in either my mouth
It's
or
somewhere else.
or Louise said it.
Okay.
One of us has already said all these lines.
So we've covered just about everything up on the top.
I'm writing along with you.
Okay.
You only say what you feel comfortable saying, but I think you might feel comfortable saying this. Here, just read it to me to see if it sounds like
The Guinan sisters, Mary Louise Cecilia and Margaret Pearl, were 5 years apart, and they were both practicing Catholics. Texas was a practicing Catholic whose parish was St. Joseph's on 6th Avenue. She baptized one of their showgirls' illegitimate babies there.
all of them.
Okay, now how am
I meant to write all of them. All of them.
Oh, all of them,
Yeah.
I see. So now how do I work into this? I mean, you know Texas was a practicing Catholic. I don't.
Well, because those newspaper clips are on my blog.
Right.
They're reported in the New York Times.
Right.
I mean, the disparity, you think of there's this wild woman, and yet she's going to services at St. Joseph, and she, the showgirls were from all, Jewish, Protestant, no faith, whatever. But she made sure that those babies were baptized, which I think shows that she's
It's important
a
for a
believer.
Catholic to have the
She's a
baptismal.
believer, and she was always the godmother in the certificate.
And it ties into the stories that she never divorced John Moynihan.
Yeah.
And see, I even question that she was ever married to John Moynihan.
Oh, okay. Then we should say that on tape, that you question it.
Because the marriage certificate or the marriage license is Marie Guinan. I say to that as a research genealogy, so what? You don't just pick a name because it fits.
No, because that's exactly what Mae West did. When Mae West married in Milwaukee in April 1911, she picked some weird name so it wouldn't be found out, but she put her real parents' name on the certificate. And all of a sudden it was discovered in the 1930s when she was a big movie star, and she kept saying, she changed her name deliberately. So I'm sure that Texas Guinan did the same thing, putting Marie, or the clerk did it. She said, my name is Mary Louise, and the clerk wrote Marie.
Oh, absolutely possible. But
No, that's what was done. You know, change your name slightly and maybe nobody can find the certificate. You know, May was thinking ahead and she
But do
was
you
thinking
think she ever
ahead.
talked about being married to him, other than what I've read in Louise's book? And then all of those supposed romances with the Julian Johnson, but there's no divorce record of Moynihan. I've searched for that.
We can't find the marriage certificate for Mae West and Guido Diero. It has never been found. However, he wanted to remarry legally. We have her divorce certificate. So, you know, sometimes you find one and you can't find the other half. I mean, you know, people have looked for that marriage certificate for a long time.
Right.
Find her 1911 marriage certificate was discovered by a clerk during the Depression, you know, going through the records and trying to put them in better order, and it was found. We never found her marriage certificate, which probably was 1913 to Guido Diero, but we do have their divorce certificate. So you wouldn't have a divorce certificate if there wasn't a marriage certificate.
Right.
And Marie could have either been her wish to disguise intentionally, or it could have just been a clerk's error. It said Mary, they heard Marie, they wrote it down.
Right.
So I wouldn't say, you know, one way or another. I mean, people came over from Ellis Island with all sorts of spellings.
Well, different
on their
names, and of course, their accents and everything. The immigration officers wrote down anything that they thought they heard, and they did it phonetically.
Right.
And then a lot of the immigrants changed their name so they would fit in.
Right.
And I understand all that happens. But when I'm matching up birth dates and marriage dates and all those sorts of things in my research, I'm just careful not to force something because it might work. And
Oh, no, I
so
know.
I look at that marriage certificate of Marie Moynihan or Marie Guinan, and not ever hearing any stories or anything that she ever went by Marie. And she didn't have an accent. She was an American born. So
Yeah.
it's a story that's out there. And I just say, okay, so she married John Moynihan and never divorced him,
Or you haven't found it yet.
or that I haven't found it. But then, like, just another article that I read again very recently saying that no, they never divorced. But yeah, she had all her paramours, or whatever you want to call them, the Julian Johnson. And we do have something at home that has Julian Johnson's name on it from Texas. And I'm thinking it's a picture frame, but the story where it came from, I haven't. It's a story from a person who mother said maybe this happened, and it said Julian Johnson in Texas. There was something in the two together, but we don't know where it came from.
Yeah, no, I know, I hear you saying you're careful, and you're right to be, but having been through attempts at research into, you know, Mae West, and another thing is Mae West was born at home, so no birth certificate,
Oh, no.
christening certificates.
But you'd go by baptismals on that. If she had been baptized, you'd find church
No,
records.
she hadn't been baptized.
No?
Because her mother came here as a Jew, married to an Irish Catholic. So they may have just
Wow.
decided, well,
Yeah, just
rather
forget
than
it.
fight about it.
And it would be a fight.
Who do we call? We call the rabbi. We call, nah, I don't want to do anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you
Kurt,
want
we
me to...
better get on with the
Are you
filling
ready to go?
lines.
Okay.
It's yeah. All right, so look at my statement and phrase it the way you want.
Okay. I think from the stories that I have heard and read, and based on my grandmother's practice, the Guinan sisters were very staunch practicing Catholics. and that Texas showed her practice of that by being very active in involving baptisms of the children that the showgirls of her troupe towards the end of her career, when they had the illegitimate babies, Texas made sure that those children were baptized. And Grandmother Pearl made sure that all of us children were baptized Catholic, so that there's no doubt there in that side. So the Catholic faith was very strong in the Guinan family, with Bridget and Michael as well.
Just mention that the sisters were 5 years apart. Mary Louise.
Oh, the
Margaret Pearl.
the two sisters being Mary Louise Cecilia Guinan, and then the younger sister Margaret Pearl, who always went by Pearl, but she was baptized Margaret Pearl, 5 years younger than Texas.
You want to do it again? Want to do that one?
Why don't you run through, if you can,
Okay.
because you were peeking down a little bit like that, so it
Yeah.
would look like you're reading, don't worry about it, you know the information, you're going to go ahead, just be comfortable, read it again and just go right on through it.
I believe both the Guinan sisters were 5 years apart, Texas being the older one. And they were both very staunch practicing Catholics. Texas was responsible for making sure that some of the showgirls in her acting troupe, her little vaudeville group, they had illegitimate babies. She made sure that those babies had been baptized. And my grandmother Pearl made sure that all 5 of us children were baptized in the Catholic Church.
Good, that's good. Let's go to some of the filling lines, and only say the ones, only say the ones that you feel comfortable saying. And it doesn't have to be, in the way one of us said it, You don't feel comfortable saying she met a reporter, John Moynihan, and ended up marrying him?
Oh yeah, I can do that.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
What about the one great-grandfather?
Mike, yes, that's fine.
Okay. Right, just stop at any that you feel you don't want to say, and I'll just put a check next to it to let Rick know not to expect it on the footage.
Okay. My great-grandfather, Michael Guinan, when they moved down from Trinidad after they were married, started in ranching, from the stories I've heard, had a hard time getting that to work for them, and he started in the grocery business and was a wholesale marketer. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how this is going. I don't feel, I'm looking down,
Yeah.
and
Okay, well,
Don't worry. Whatever you
you don't have to
say,
worry.
say.
You go
Whatever
ahead,
you
get
say,
yourself
Just
centered,
reading.
get yourself centered, and then
Yeah.
you start right where you think you ended up. That's fine. That's why we edit,
okay.
so you'll be fine.
After Texas moved with the family to Denver, as she was growing up, I think in her late teens, she met a reporter, John Moynihan, and they moved to Chicago and got married. And what I have heard is that she stayed married to him, although she had many other male friends. Those stories, I know she has mentioned, or there's been a mention of Julian Johnson. Don't really know anything about that particular one. And then when she was in Southern California doing her movie business in the Hollywood area, she had many romances with the different male stars that she had with those actors.
Do you want to mention the line about that she met a New York composer, Reginald de Coven, or that part? In Chicago, she met a New York composer, Reginald de Coven, or not?
I can read it. I don't,
Well, we can
what
shorten
page
it.
are you on?
It's
Oh,
the
there.
third line. Yeah, we could say, in Chicago, she met a New York composer, Reginald de Coven. That's all.
While Texas was in Chicago with John Moynihan, she met a composer by the name of Reginald de Coven, and she did a lot of singing as a child growing up and was quite a singer. She's made, based on stories, I have to say that Texas has made some poor choices with men in her life, with her relationships. But I think based on the story, she was a very sharp businesswoman in making herself self-sufficient in all of her clubs that she worked, and staying clear of the law, even though that time during Prohibition she was susceptible to being arrested and taken in. She stayed clear of it and was never found guilty of the things that she was charged with. It was a very active, the Roaring Twenties was an exciting time, and New York was the place to be, and that's where Texas wanted to move back there from Los Angeles after her film career failed, which she did do movies. I think she had 9 or 10 black and white silents, but her home was in New York, and she moved back.
Let's go back to page 1 and just tie in her remarkable skills on horseback that made her very desirable to filmmakers, how it began in her childhood because she was taken to Bridget's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Let's tie in the line on the horseback that she was sent away to her
Okay.
aunt whose house? Aunt Anne?
Mary.
Aunt Mary.
Yeah.
Let's tie in the line about her phenomenal horseback
Okay.
riding skills to actually being part of a punishment that she was sent to the country because she was too loud.
Okay.
Let's just tie in that line.
Okay. Her movies in Hollywood were on horseback, and she became a remarkable horsewoman from her childhood, growing up in Waco, and also in Colorado. They owned a ranch, and when she was being a bad teenager, and Bridget, her mom, had had enough, she would send her off to the ranch for discipline to her Aunt Mary. And I think that probably helped a lot with her horseback riding skills.
She took a lemon and she made lemonade, right?
Yes.
What about the line about Warren Harding? Did you see on my blog the picture of them where they wanted to steal the president's car, and she's posed in front of it in 1922. She actually went out on the stump for Warren Harding.
No, that's all.
Okay, so
That's
you don't
foreign to me.
you don't want to say the line about Warren Harding. That's okay. That's okay. We'll skip it. I just want to tell Rick what to expect.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not going to say that line about Warren Harding. There's a picture of Texas. It's actually on White House grounds. There's a spectacular convertible behind her. She's standing with 3 men, and she's wearing joggers. That picture. That's on the White House grounds, and that car belonged to the president. And they didn't steal it, but they made a show that they were going to take the car.
Okay.
Do you remember? She's
I
standing
remember
in
the
front
picture,
of this
yeah.
car.
I do.
And she's got the joggers on, and she's posing with like 3 men.
Right.
Right.
And
that was the picture where she
Okay.
was invited to the White House, and they made a joke that we're here to steal the car.
Okay.
That was it.
Yeah,
This was
let's not put that in.
1922.
Okay.
This was 1922. Okay, so, all right, let's talk about, you said the line about the Roaring Twenties, so we got that. All right, do you want to say anything about the King Cole Room in the Knickerbocker Hotel?
I don't know a lot about the Knickerbocker Hotel or a number of the clubs that she is known to have been the hostess for, but I know there were a lot of them.
Yeah.
The Knickerbocker being one, the El Fay being another one.
This before Larry Fay.
Oh,
This was like her training ground.
Okay.
That, you know, and then he met her because she already, like, had instigated herself into this, you know, whole thing. But then, let's say the line about Larry Fay then.
and then when she met Larry Fay, her life went into a different direction as being the hostesses, or the hostess with the mostest, for the clubs, the different clubs in New York, and it was more than one. Her reputation preceded her, and she was recruited by other club owners. She also went to, and I'm not sure of the time frame, she went to Florida for Larry Fay and opened up a second one because they thought that was going to be the new wave, but that also failed. The Depression, I think, brought all of that to a halt too.
Yeah,
I have
the
to-
way I heard it in the newspapers, and I think it was a nice cover story, but it looked like she and Larry had had a falling out. I don't think it was a failure. I think she, at that point, felt she's dead weight. I'm the star.
Okay.
That's what I think happened. And I think also she felt, you know, Florida at that time was like Los Angeles. It's just a small town. New York is the exciting thing. I mean, you go to Florida, then it was what? Swampland, and, you know, orange trees and stuff like that. It's like, I'm a big deal. What am I doing in this place? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Even if there's business there, it's not her crowd. You know what I'm saying?
But my understanding is that it was the prohibition. It did not work as well as it did up in New York.
No, because she ditched Larry before Prohibition. She broke free
Okay.
of him before. So
See,
that's
the
when
timing.
Yeah.
The
that's
whole
it.
timing is,
Yeah. And I
forward.
have it on my blog when
Okay.
they severed their relationship. Because he was always in the background, this horse-faced, skinny guy. You know, he was never in the club, you know, on stage. He was just in the back, you know, with the showgirls and, you know.
making the
and-
money.
Yeah, making money. So when they parted company and she started at the Texas Guinan Club and so forth, he was gone.
Gone.
And this was before Prohibition ended.
Okay.
She ditched him.
Okay.
So that was the break there. It wasn't that the club failed. She shed that skin. You know, she came back to New York and Texas Guinan Club and Club Antime. That was strictly hers.
Okay.
I mean, she was in partners with Only Madden and so forth. You know, gangsters were backing her, but she no longer needed to have the El Fay and the Del Fay, you know, and so forth. And then she opened the club, the Playground with Tommy Guinan. Tommy Guinan's Playground. Texas and Tommy Ryan's, and then they had another one called the Texas
Didn't know
Tommy.
that.
Yeah, well, it's on the blog.
Right.
But I mean, she was even partnering with her brother to give him a boost, but she didn't need to partner with Larry anymore. It was
Yes,
like he could
I did
float his own
hear that.
boat. Yeah,
She propped Tommy up.
yeah. So let's.
It's my job to make sure you guys know we're at 4 o'clock now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we have
well, we
about
got
30
30
minutes that we haven't.
We have 45 minutes. They gave us the 45
Yeah,
minutes.
they gave
the
us-
library closes at
But
5, and they're not
there was-
going to put anybody in here,
Oh,
but it's a
okay.
good thing to
We got to be
keep that
backing up the
going.
library.
Hello, hello, Mr. Guinan. Okay, so let's talk about every speakeasy was the place to be, was the choice hangout for celebrities. Those two lines are very much the same. So however you want to put those two lines together. The speakeasy was a place to be, celebrities came, news reporters came. The two lines are really similar, so whatever you want to say.
Were you after the Larry Fay?
Yeah, right after Larry Fay. Those two lines are pretty similar, so say whatever you want to say.
So every speakeasy that she ran was the place to be. Her enormous personality attracted the upscale clientele of New York and beyond.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to be at one of the speakeasies.
And then let's move on to a keen eye for talent. You know, for example, one of the people that she pushed was, you know, you have that whole page. You have that whole page from the magazine. Guinan started their careers. George
Raft.
And, what do you call Claire Booth and Barbara Stanwyck, and you know, so they were all her showgirls.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can mention George Raft. She had a keen eye for talent, and some performers like George Raft got their start at her clubs.
She had a keen eye for talent, and one of the ones that is well known is George Raft, and helped prop up and move ahead some of their celebrity statuses.
And then we have the Hello Suckers line. Give that a big give that a big breath. Everybody knew that trademark.
Everybody knew her signature line of "Hello Suckers." What the other half of that is, bring your wallet and leave it on the bar. She learned the speakeasy business, and she made a lot of money for herself and her partners. She excelled at it. She was a hard worker. And we already talked on staying out of the crosshairs of the law. She knew how to do that too. And she made fun and light of the arrests that she did go through. She made them publicity stunts and got away with it.
Kurt, we're on our last page of filling lines.
Okay.
Yeah, so moving along. Go ahead. You give this one a big laugh about, you know, buying breakfast for the jailhouse and the police, and you know, he didn't put this line here, but it's a great line you have to say. What she would say to the police is, "You got a nice little jail here. It's the only place my diamonds feel safe."
I've read that.
Give that a big...
I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm sorry. You do it well.
There's a story about where she was arrested following a raid, and she bought breakfast for the entire jailhouse, including the police. In fact, she used to say about jails, "This is the only place my diamonds feel safe." Try to tie it in. Can't do it? Okay. I'm more of a ham. I've been living with Texas
Yes.
for many years.
Yes,
Okay.
I said, you know her inside and out.
I really feel her, you know. I really feel her. You know, I do her at parties and so forth.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
beyond my ability.
I do all her routines at parties, you know, for the camera and stuff
So
like
one
that.
of the suckers with you, one of something more.
Oh, do you remember when I did that one with Francis? I had a cocktail party right on 9th Street where we had the exhibit.
Uh-huh.
This was another year. When I did a walking tour, I called it Washington Square Women.
Yes.
I did Mae West. We invented the drink, the Cosmopolitan, and Texas Guinan. So we had brunch, and then we started the walking tour, right? So I had one of my friends play the part of the butter and egg man. And so the whole place, the whole restaurant quieted because we worked out this was routine, right? So I go up to him, and he's at the bar, and I said, "Oh, yeah, I don't know who you are, but I noticed you're spending a lot of money." All of a sudden, this whole place, it's like nobody's talking, right? And I said, and we worked out this routine, the guy and I, you know, ahead of time. But the audience didn't know, right? So I said, so what business are you in? He said, "Oh, no, I don't want to say. Oh, go, come on." says, some dairy cows. And I said, oh, everybody meet the butter and egg men.
She did say
And then
that.
they knew they were had,
Right.
because this was a routine. But when I
Routine.
started saying, oh, you're spending a lot of money in this place, everybody's
Got real quiet.
They got real quiet. They got real quiet. Okay, so let's talk about buying the breakfast for the police. The top line over there. The story about when she was arrested and she bought breakfast
The story
for everybody.
that she was arrested and bought breakfast for the whole police jailhouse there.
No, you said police jailhouse.
Oh,
Let's do it again.
The entire jailhouse. Okay, there's a story that when she was arrested following a raid at one of the clubs, she bought breakfast for the entire jailhouse, including the police. Although she was not convicted, she made a big notoriety at a level where she could not operate in New York City anymore. She was too famous.
Let's have that line again. If you don't want to say notoriety, just say that she was too controversial. Although she was not convicted, she knew that she was so controversial she couldn't operate anymore in New York.
Although she was not convicted, Texas knew that her notoriety was at a level where she couldn't operate anymore in New York City.
That's good. That's good. Let's do the stock market.
The 1929 stock market crash affected the speakeasy business. The 1929 stock market crash affected the speakeasy business, and she felt the downturn in her own business also.
Try to say it without looking up. That's an important one. Try to say it with just looking at me.
Okay. In 1929, the stock market crash affected the speakeasy business, and she felt it as well in her business.
That's good. That's good. Okay, we're almost done, Susan. You're doing really well. You're doing really well.
In the spring of 1930, she ended up in Chicago after being pursued by a couple of promoters. I don't know what that means.
Harry Boiler, they wanted her to come to Chicago to the Green Mill Club. Remember, she's not Larry Fay's partner anymore,
right.
so people are trying to latch on, so, she can
Okay.
bring her fame there.
So she
With
went
that-
back to Chicago.
Briefly, with the Green Mill Club.
Okay.
That was padlocked too, but she was there. That was the famous Harry Voiler thing. That Harry Voiler is why she and Mae West were no longer talking, because he.
But these things I can't roll off the tip of my tongue like you can.
Yeah.
I would be having to look down to read this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Harry Voiler is the one who in 1934 robbed Mae West of her jewels, and was the great Mae West jewel robbery where they scared her to death, and she was in a car and they put a gun in her face and everything. I'm sorry, 1933 jewel robbery, and she knew that he was the manager of the Green Mill Club, and she felt that Texas was somehow involved. Texas was not involved. Texas didn't say, go there, she's wealthy and rob her. This guy was just, criminal. But this was why they were no longer speaking, and then of course she died. So this was the 1933
They never made up.
nonsense, that they never made up. It was very terrible to have, be in a car and all of a sudden have somebody put a gun in your face in the back seat and he said, give me the poke, which was her purse. So this was this character, but he is a very handsome man. I have a wonderful picture from the Chicago Tribune where Texas is, he's in a beautiful suit, and she's sitting at a table, and she's supposedly signing the contract for the Green Mill Club. I just found that like in the last 2 years. I hadn't found it before. They put it in the archives, so I now know what he looks like.
Wow.
Yeah, it's on the blog.
Never
too.
heard that.
Yeah, the Harry Boiler thing. All right. So, do you feel like talking about the Green Mill Club, or would you rather you don't want to say? Okay.
Rather not.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the Whoopee on Wheels tour. And you've seen that picture, right? That bus that she
Right,
had
yeah,
painted,
that-
Whoopee on Wheels.
Right. I've
And she
seen
took the
that.
showgirls
And that was
around.
in the late 30s?
No,
No,
and then
no, because she
no,
died in 33, so it
yeah,
would have been the
like
early 30s.
1930, 31,
Okay.
yeah.
So it was after the clubs,
Yeah, it was after the crash.
right, after the crash.
1930, 31, was it the early, after the crash. After the crash.
So after
she
the
used her
crash,
celebrity.
she used her celebrity status in promoting the traveling stage that was called Whoopee on Wheels, which had all of her showgirls, and it was a traveling vaudeville type show that she traveled all over the country and tried to get into Europe, France, I believe it was, and they wouldn't let her in. Her ship never was allowed to be disembarked, and they said it was because of the French labor laws, that they didn't want conflict with the French actors. So they turned the ship around and she came back home, and then she made that into a big publicity poster of her next show was Too Hot for Paris, that she made fun of them, that they wouldn't let her vaudeville show in.
Yeah, they felt that she was going to be too too famous in France, and would take away from all of their stars, and here they'd be granting her access, and she could be so dangerous, So they felt, don't let this one think she can work in Europe, because Europe had no prohibition. There was no prohibition in Europe. So they figured, once she's here, we give her an inch. Next thing, she's taking over all of the left bank, right?
She would.
So, and then she would have.
She would have.
Yeah. So we only have 3 more.
This, we said that forming the Planet Mars Club. I don't know what the Planet Mars Club is. I don't know about it.
Okay. I'll just put a line through it. Susan, you're not reading my blog. The next time
I'm not
see
staying
you,
up on it, that's for sure.
the next time I see you, there's going to be a quiz on my blog.
All right.
So we've got 2 more.
And what is the reasoning for you saying she rediscovered religion?
Oh, because of her friendship with Amy Semple McPherson and taking all of the showgirls over there. She posed with her.
Yes.
Right. He just wrote these quickly. This would be the Amy Semple McPherson thing. Now, Amy was not a Catholic. She had the church of, whatever. She had her own church. Let me just write down Amy Semple McPherson. But she brought her little girls, her troop of showgirls,
Right,
to
and
some
listened
of Amy's,
to her. Yeah.
So I don't know. Rick wrote this.
Okay,
It's not like she discovered religion. Let's just talk about that. Toward the end of her life, she met the evangelist Amy Semple McPherson and went to hear some of her lectures, because I don't think she ever had to rediscover. It's just that this woman was famous and a successful businesswoman, and she went there and met her.
Yeah. I thought she was doing it to ridicule.
Oh, interesting.
When I read that story,
Yeah.
I took it that she was saying, here, take your prohibition and your religion and look what my girls can do type of thing. That it was almost as a protest.
Oh, that's interesting. Say that. Give your take on it. That's interesting. But use the word Amy Semple McPherson versus rediscovering religion. I don't know where Rick got that from.
Well,
Rick is not paying attention.
Well, towards the end of her life, when Amy Semple McPherson came to be very popular, Texas took her showgirls to many of her performances. And my take, when I read about it, it's that she was kind of flaunting her bawdiness in front of Amy. And yet they were respectful when they went in. They listened to her, and maybe they actually took in what she was saying. But it could be that she was doing a conversion of back to religion, or she was just saying, no, this is my lifestyle, and we're here.
Yeah, very good. Very good, Susan. That's a good one. That's a good one. You got more than Rick's silly line. That was great. That was great. Okay. Susan has one more line to say. One more line to say. No babies cry. Okay. This is the Mae West line. Now,
And that's it?
You know that she and Mae West went to the theater together.
Yes.
They went to movies together. And in those years, Mae wasn't even known. So it was that Texas Guinan showed up at this, they would have these midnight movie premieres, and that Mae West would be with her. But, Mae West was not, a celebrity of any
No, I
stretch of
had heard that
imagination.
basically
Yeah.
Texas made her.
Yeah. Well, she invested in the shows.
Right.
You want to say that too?
That she invested in the shows?
Yeah, she made her.
Made her?
She
Yeah.
She used her money to,
And there
invest
was-
in the show.
First
Tommy
there-
did too.
First there was Texas, then there was Mae West.
Yeah.
And-
Let's say something about the relationship that she was enormously helpful to her by investing in her shows.
Okay.
Tommy too.
Among many of Texas friendships that she developed, Mae West was one of the bigger ones, and she was very instrumental in getting Mae West started and promoting her and backing her and providing for her to get ahead, where Mae West went on to be very, very successful. Her start came from Texas.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, super. Is there anything you want to say before you shuts everything down?
No,
No. You sure?
I'm sure.
Before we close everything down, there's a fur coat that came, I believe.
Oh yeah, we
How
want
are
to.
we
We
gonna
want to
factor
show.
that in here?
Yeah, we want to show
How do you
those on
want-
camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
tomorrow.
let's show the cameos. and
It'll
stuff.
completely cover me.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what I want to do then is that,
Mike, would you bring the code up?
and I'll
please?
take this off here so I can get a broader look.
Kurt, Susan also brought some jewelry to show close-ups.
Some jewelry?
like
Okay.
Cameos. Do you want me
Yeah.
to clear this table? Maybe we'll put the jewelry here.
Okay, sure.
Let me know.
So
So
that's-
better off
You
shooting
could
on
walk that on top of the coat. Be pretty presumptuous,
Okay,
decadent.
so what I'm going to say is that we're done with the filming, yes, we're good?
Yes.
But what I'm
She's
good-
going to show you the code.
Is she going to show the code?
Oh, you want me to show it? Oh, I'm just going to put it on
Then
there.
let me just, I'm going to hold this for a second. Let's see. Why don't you hand her the code and then I can.
Keep the hanger there.
No, take the hat.
Yeah, why don't you just stand up and put it right on the drink?
Does it have a label?
It does, yes.
You might want to see that.
But you do have to know for disclaimer, I cut off 12 inches from the bottom. Because it was,
She was a big woman.
yeah, and it was,
Louise tried on that coat, and she said she was
I'm a big woman.
big person. Wow, cut off 12
And
inches.
it's-
Wow,
That's a-
beautiful. Oh, look at
It
that
goes all the way
coat. Look
up.
at that coat.
Pockets?
Any money in the pockets?
Why
No
don't you
money
turn
in
your
the
face?
pocket.
Turn your face.
Turn and face you. Do I have it upside right?
Let me see.
And then there was a meeting. I don't think it was over, it's cold.
think for Chicago wins, it was
That's
just,
perfect.
That's what I want to do. Hold on a second. Let me just.